legislative proposal to speed up the deportation of asylum seekers that didn't get permission to stay in the European Union. Their claims are processed in state reception centers like this one. In a move to shore up the asylum and migration rules, the European Commission is even now considering sending the returnees to deportation centers outside the bloc. This week's eu-decoded explains the common European system for returns.
The revised regulation fills a gap within the Pact on Migration and Asylum to be implemented from June 2026. This specific proposal wants to address the fact that only about 20% of yearly deportation orders are carried out, according to Eurostat. Lists of safe countries of origin and safe third countries to which people whose asylum applications are rejected may be sent should be defined. Deportation centers, called return hubs, could be built in countries outside the EU.
The non-EU countries would receive financial incentives from EU states to host these centers, but some returnees may never have been in those countries. We asked Europeans what they think about what people describe as outsourcing of migration policy.
Io penso che noi dovremmo ricordarci di quando siamo stati noi migranti, essere un po' più umani con tutti. Se lo fossimo, vivremmo in una società migliore.
Sono favorevole perché per me se tu non hai un diritto a rimanere, un permesso regolare, non è giusto che tu stia qui da noi, quindi devi essere da un'altra parte.
Capisco queste persone che migrano verso i nostri paesi perché vengono da situazioni estremamente difficili e delicate. Però certo è anche vero che una regolamentazione un po' più accentuata sicuramente ci vuole.
Δηλαδή πρέπει να εξετάζεται κάθε περίπτωση ξεχωριστά και αυτοί που έχουν αρνητικό παρελθόν να μεταφέρονται.
Γιατί εδώ υπάρχει ανάγκη για εργατικά χέρια. Δηλαδή για παράδειγμα στα έργα του Μητροπολιτικού Πάρκου στο Ελληνικό λέει η εργολήπτρια εταιρεία ότι έχει έλλειμμα εργατικών χεριών. Άρα...
With us is Jorge Liboreiro, who has been following migration and asylum policy for Euronews. Until recently, the European Commission rejected this idea of the so-called deportation centers in non-EU countries. What has changed in the meantime?
Well, basically the politics change. Europe as a whole has moved further to the right gradually, and ideas that used to be more common in far-right circles, hard-right circles, like outsourcing of migration, gradually move into the mainstream. And the Commission responded to this by incorporating the policy into its own policy, but it's really a normalization of a policy that used to be considered extreme. Now it's acceptable.
What could be the role of the European Commission in the eventual setting up of the so-called return hubs?
Well, the Commission in its regulation has done something very interesting. It has put forward several articles that establish the legal basis for member states to build these deportation centers outside of the European Union. But then the Commission will not be involved in the managing of these centers. So in a way it's saying, you can do it, but I don't want to know anything about this. That
being said, which countries are more likely to support the idea and which might be a little bit more against it?
Well, this is an unprecedented idea, so I think some member states will really think it twice, 3 times, 4 times before going ahead with it. But we can see that Italy, Denmark and the Netherlands have been leading the political discussions around outsourcing, bringing other countries in a sort of coalition. But I think these 3 countries that led the debate might also lead this push to actually build the centers now that the regulation is on the table.
The regulation states that the rejected asylum seeker must cooperate with the authorities, including providing ID and biometric information, as well as not absconding to another member state. If the person does not cooperate, the consequences can include reduction or refusal of benefits and allowances, seizure of identity documents, and longer entry bans.
We discussed the pros and cons with 2 members of the European Parliament who have very different positions on this proposal, and that we'll discuss it in the Justice and Home Affairs Committee.
Es una consideración global del fenómeno migratorio desde el punto de vista de la capacidad de los Estados miembros para el retorno, ¿no? Y en ese sentido sí creemos que tiene todas las condiciones para ser un instrumento que permita una política mucho más eficaz de retorno.
I think indeed it's not the answer that is needed in terms of returns. I think this return directive is just a political answer to the claims of the far right, be it Meloni or others that want to strengthen and to assimilate migration issues with security issues. And we've seen it all over the place.
Los centros de retorno podrán establecerse mediante acuerdos bilaterales de los Estados miembros con terceros países. Cuando estos acuerdos se produzcan, lo que el reglamento prevé es que sí que la Unión Europea va a imponer unos determinados contenidos a esos acuerdos, precisamente para que se garantice el respeto de los derechos fundamentales y muy en especial de aquellas personas más vulnerables.
There will be no monitoring of fundamental rights, even if it's claimed so. How will the EU check whether on the ground in the third countries the human rights of people will be respected? We see that already today, without these official apps, there are human rights violations all over the place.
Que si garantizamos un marco de respeto a los derechos fundamentales y los mecanismos necesarios para monitorizar esos derechos fundamentales, yo creo que será mucho más fácil desde el punto de vista legal que las iniciativas de centros de retorno puedan, digamos, pasar el control judicial.
The legislators should take that into account. The whole concept of safe third countries is also being revisited, which means that there's no guarantee today that those countries are safe for the people that will be sent to them and that their fundamental rights will be respected.
An European return order is also part of the proposal so that all member states respect a decision taken in one of them. So, will this be enough to increase solidarity and cooperation between member states on such a controversial issue such as migration? Anyway, the concept of Fortress Europe seems to be consolidating in a world increasingly concerned by border security.